Yeah, cool. You're done with your stuff, so go play with computers.
Welcome back to the Rogue Academic Podcast. Today we are talking with Eric Schwartz, the author of Schwarz Tech, which is an excellent resource for all things Mac-related commentary and factual. And we're talking to him about his journey from point A, I've chosen a major in college, to point B/Z, oh look, I have to make a living. Like many of us, he's pivoted a million times and has an incredible story to tell. So without any further ado, here's Eric. All right, so we are back, and I am delighted to have with me today and every day the man behind the curtain, so to speak, with the promotion of the show. He does all the graphics and picks up my pieces when I've decided that I'm just useless. My fiance, Eric Schwartz. We had talked about doing an episode together for a while, so this is, a while has been here, so now we're here.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of played the host, if you will, in the first episode to kind of get the tone of the show going, and so that people could get to know you. But I didn't necessarily want to be like one of the first guests, mostly because it sounds like you've been really setting the tone with this. You've had some great folks kind of sharing some information in that. I kind of laughed at like the one talking about promotions and such, and kind of how you can get yourself out there more, because that's totally something that's maybe out of my depths, but we've been kind of on the right track in some ways, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a ton of work.
Oh, yeah. And I think, some of the changes, it was funny because that was recorded a few weeks before. And so, like, we had made a few changes to your website just to...
like, killing TikTok, for instance.
Yeah, that was another good one right
Oops.
there. But yeah, I think, I wanted to at least share my 2 cents, because I think I have a unique kind of background and sort of the weird walking the tightrope between higher ed and tech and media and
like your perspective is so needed in so many ways for folks that happen to be creatives, because you are a creative. You're just not the person that's in front of the camera all the time. And I think that's really worthwhile, because those of us, and probably a lot of my listeners, are the folks that happen to be in front of the camera or happen to be in front of the microphone. So it'll be good to get your perspective on a lot of, career identity sort of things too, because artists, like, not that you're not an artist, but creatives that happen to be, the talent, if you will, define ourselves by that talent, right?
Yeah.
And so I think you and I have both navigated like coming to terms with our self-identity and where do we derive that and all that fun stuff. So you said you started your whole career in media, like when you got out of high school, where you were just like, oh my gosh, I want to work for like the movies, or like, what was that?
Yeah, so kind of funny. Let's go back a little further then, because I feel like that kind of gives some foundational...
Is this Eric's origin story?
Not quite.
Oh, okay.
But like like a lot of future burnt out gifted kids in the 90s, schoolwork was relatively easy for the most part. There were certainly some subjects that I didn't enjoy, and ones that, maybe I didn't quite pick up as quickly. But I, among other things, found myself really good with computers from a young age. We typically had some, various PCs at home that were my dad's work issued ones, and he'd let me play on them here and there. They had a couple old ones that we would use for like typing reports and such. And so that was kind of my, my introduction to computers there. At school, we had a lot of Macs back in, again, the early 90s, a couple Apple IIs. And so all of that was so I have these at home and I have these at school. And basically, I was getting done with a lot of stuff in school. And so rather than, finding more challenging work for me or finding things like that, they're just like, yeah, cool, you're done with your stuff, so go play with computers.
That's so relatable.
Yeah, and we had just moved into a new school, I think when I was in 5th grade. And so at the time, I mean, now it's all laughably obsolete and, well in the vintage category. But I mean, we had a new computer lab. We had, a scanner, digital camera. And this was, again, in the 90s. So like a digital camera back then, you could take, I think, like 16 or 20 pictures, and then it was full. There weren't memory cards.
I remember those days.
Yeah, and so it was like we have all this tech in the school, and no one's really using a lot of it. And so, hey, Eric, you have some free time. Would you like to play with this? And among other things, I found myself also operating our soundboard for certain events.
Oh, really? You were the front of house guy?
Well, so they first had, they just had a mixer in the back room in like a cabinet. And so it was we're going to have an event here. You know, Eric's good at this stuff. And so, and again, I'm going, in hindsight, you're trusting like a 4th or 5th grader.
4th or 5th grader is front of house. Okay.
To run sound. Yeah. And then I think the next year they got like a small like tabletop mixer that everything ran through instead. But yeah, there was like a few events and such that I was using that for and such. And
so you've been the man behind the curtain since you were like 10.
Well, a little bit. And so the thing is, like, I had an interest in computers, and finally a friend of ours had given me an old Radio Shack TRS-80 for those who might know. Very old at that time already. I mean, this is a computer from the early 80s. I was getting in like the mid 90s and I learned to program on it. I kind of messed around with stuff. I mean, I wasn't really doing anything of substance. It was mostly just playing to play.
Oh, relatable.
Yeah. And then that kind of progressed. I got an old Apple II that our school was getting rid of, moved on to that. And then eventually it was I want to get a printer for this computer. And trying to find a printer for a probably 12-year-old computer was kind of a tough thing, especially in kind of the area of like the late 90s. You look at a lot of like Apple stuff now and it's like, well, of course Apple's supported. Back then it was one of those where it's like, why would you bother with that? This is a company that's circling the drain and everything's Windows.
I remember being in my undergrad, so it would have been like early 2000s, and people even in like creative fields still felt that way about Apples. They're just like, oh, they're fussy and weird and you don't want to touch them because you can't fix anything on them. Did that have roots in that era as well, or?
No, I mean, I think it was mostly just that because everything was so different than the PC world in terms of like file compatibility, software. I mean, even hardware. There was no like, I mean, nowadays everything's USB, so it's like as long as something can physically plug into it, chances are it might work. Back then, I mean, completely different connectors for even something like a keyboard or a mouse. And so that was one where I ended up with an old Mac. That came bundled with a printer from a used computer store in town. And I think we paid like $75 for the pair of that. And, it was kind of from there that I kind of got interested in some of these old Macs. And then it was, I don't know, every couple, 6 months, 8 months or so, we'd go back to that used computer store and pick up maybe something a little newer. So I was like slowly upgrading over time, but like $25 here and there. They got a lot of like surplus from Notre Dame at the time. So that was where it was like, oh yeah, we have all these, old computers. And so that was the case. And so that got me into, there were a number of email listservs kind of supporting all these old computers. And so this is, again, the days before Reddit, the days before a lot of social media. It was one of these where I'm a kid in Indiana and I want to know how to like make this stuff work and to make it work better. And maybe what kind of ways can I source parts or things like that. And so I was really active on some of those low-end Mac discussion boards, which then led to me writing for a website called Low-End Mac.
And that is the beginning of Eric becoming internet famous because he would never say as much. And it's a different kind of fame. It's like being jazz famous, right? So like in the right room, people know who I am by name, like, oh yeah, she's this, that, and the other. And I think in the same way you are famous in the right room, people are like, oh my gosh, you're the guy who writes Schwarz Tech. I've seen your name everywhere. So like get us from those non-Reddit sort of forum things to Schwarz Tech.
Yeah. So Low-End Mac was a website. It still is. But it kind of had, I would say, its heyday, and no offense to the folks running it now, but it had its heyday in kind of the late 90s, early 2000s when computers as a whole would get significantly faster and better every year. So something that was 5 years old in the late 90s felt absolutely ancient. Like today, you could be using a computer from 2020 and it's still perfectly fine. But back then, I mean, you might as well have been, using an antique. So there was a small group of us that were just like geeking out about these old computers, getting them on the internet, with maybe an old modem or like making, software, designing websites and all, because you could still do a lot of stuff on them. It just was maybe slower or fussier.
Right.
And I mean, I really got to enjoy sort of the intentionality of the old Mac OS prior to kind of the iMac era, and that where everything was simple from a design standpoint, yet worked really well. There were certainly some things that were showing their age by the late 90s, where, if a program misbehaved, it would freeze the whole computer or crash it and that. And so
the dreaded blue screen of death.
Well, that was the Windows side, but yeah, you'd get the little bomb pop up and such. Yeah. And so it was one of those where it was like they were quirky, but if you really kind of leaned into some things, you could really appreciate the thought behind some of these designs and some of the way things were put together. And that kind of contrasted with the fact that at the time Apple was like 90 days from insolvency. And so you're just going like, oh, they did something really nice and elegant here, and this may not be around much longer. And so I was on the low-end Mac listservs at that time, because they would have it like broken out by like category of computers. So you could, like, if you had this one, you would chat with people that had like this family or that. And over time, I got to writing for their actual website. I had a column on there. Now, again, like, I look back at some of the writing and I'm just like, oh man, yeah, that was totally like a, 14, 15-year-old, like.
But probably miles ahead of the average 14 or 15-year-old now, because, lack of emojis and, acronyms, because they hadn't been invented yet.
I mean, I'm not going to roast kids today.
We can, if you want.
But that was one of those that, like, yeah, I was doing that, and I made a few friends who also were writing there at the time. We had some folks that were in college that were writing for it, and just, I mean, part of it was fueled by lack of funds from all of us. Is that, we were playing with this old tech, but it was fun. And over time, I got into going, well, this internet thing is kind of cool. I want to have my own little corner of the internet. And so at that time, you could sign up for various services to just make a personal webpage. And so at the time, I signed up on GeoCities, which was owned by Yahoo at the time.
Ooh, that's vaguely familiar. Yeah.
Yeah, and the cool thing about GeoCities was that you would have like your like geocities.com / whatever like your username was, but you could also the way it used to be organized prior to Yahoo purchasing it, and they kind of left this in the code and setup, was that they put you in a neighborhood based on the topics that you were covering.
How very Sweetwater of them.
Well, and so like if you were like, oh, I'm going to do my site about tech, they would put you, I think it was like Silicon Valley. So it'd be like geocities.com / Silicon Valley / and then I think then they would put like a number or something that would be like your quote unquote address. So it was very much like, an analog to the real world.
Yeah. Okay.
And so there were all kinds of these communities, and it was just like what city in real life is kind of stereotypically like fitting for this. And so so I made a little site, and I called it Schwarz Tech. And this was kind of based out of my non-existent software company that back when I was like doing programming on the TRS-80. That was kind of where the name came from. I had shelved that and then reused it. And so that site was originally just like, hey, I'm staking my claim on the internet. I got my own little corner of the web. I'm going to just do whatever here. And over time, I found that I was getting into newer tech, and I kind of wanted to have my own place for it. And so that's where I was doing the writing on Schwarz Tech. It kind of evolved over time. I had a couple partnerships with some folks where it was working with briefly a fellow in New Zealand that was running Mac Weekly at the time. And so we were doing that together. And then eventually kind of everything ended up back in my lap, and my site's been kind of there since.
And you've been making money on your site since you were 15. Like, I think that's noteworthy. Even if it's not a lot of money, I mean, you were early to that game.
It was a little later than that, because it was when I actually started writing regularly for it. I got in with like Google AdSense in the early 2000s when you could actually make like quite a bit of money just for having ads. Nowadays, I just run a little tiny ad by Carbon Ads, which, really non-intrusive, not obnoxious. If you have an ad blocker, like, I get it. I mean, I run an ad blocker, so
right. I think everybody
yeah.
that's smart probably does.
But it's one of those where, like, my plea is basically, look, if you want to turn the ad blocker off my site, I'm not going to be a creep about it or, be abusive. But if not, I get it. But it's usually enough to kind of keep the lights on and about that. And I'm not really doing it to get rich. I'm not doing it to, really do much other than go, hey, I've been kind of watching the world of tech, maybe from the corner of the world of like Apple, as we saw the meteoric rise. But like Apple going from a company that was almost out of business to Steve Jobs comes back, we get the iMac, the iPod, all of a sudden the iPhone, and now, this company that was, on the brink of bankruptcy through various things is now one of the largest companies in the world. And so, but of course it's like all these stories are intertwined. It's not just Apple. It's, you have Microsoft, you have Google, you have Facebook, you have, all these players. And, some of that comes into like regulation. Some of it comes into just, calling out the sliminess that's out there these days. And so, definitely the tone of the site's changed a little bit. I've done some product reviews in there too, where for a while there, especially during like the iPod gold rush, I had companies just sending me things to like try out and give my opinion on.
Dude, that must have been so much fun because you were like still like what, late teens, early 20s at that point?
Yeah, I was like in college at the time.
Oh, so like how friggin' cool were you? I mean, granted, it's college, so we're both nerds, and maybe not as cool as I think you are, but it's still cool to have companies know about you.
Yeah, and I mean, some of it was reaching out to them, and then they were like, "Oh yeah, you have a website and you've been doing this," and some of it is just they see maybe their competitors have products there, and I've always tried to be at least upfront about that. If it's been something that has been sent to me, if it's been something where I try to be neutral in terms of the review itself. But I've kind of that's slowed down a bit, especially because I'm just not buying every device every year to test things against. Right. So that kind of dried up in that way. Yeah. I'm like 2 or 3 iPhones behind now at this point. And like, I'm like, okay, well, when it's time to get something new, I will. But, I'm keeping an eye on what's out there. And, that's kind of been the case. But then on top of that, I've experimented with different things because this has kind of been my little playground for web development. I've done, I had a podcast with a friend briefly. So that was where, and that was a lot of self-hosting too. So It was a lot of like pain in the butt, getting the feed working and that.
Shout out to Fireside. Like you've made this so easy to host a podcast. And also for the record, that was Eric's idea as well. So the man behind the curtain, truly.
What else have I, and then, the format's changed a little bit too. It started off as just purely a like articles, and like opinion articles and reviews. And over time it's kind of shifted to be more like a link blog format, including reviews and opinion articles and that, because then I can kind of have long form thing. Or again, things where I go, well, this is something I want to weigh in on or share with my readers. And so that's kind of been where that is.
So logically, you must have majored in something tech related in college. Because like in my world, that is how that logic progresses, right? Because like to like the analog of your gifted kid situation, instead of, being given equipment to go fiddle around with, I was like, okay, I'm done with all my work. And my teachers did not know what to do with me. So they sent me down to the band room to practice because I would inevitably spend the rest of the day there, not just practicing, but literally tinkering with other instruments. Like I can take apart a clarinet and put it back together. I could do that before I even got to college, so, the logical progression there was like, well, of course I'm going to be a band director. This is what I always do in my free time. Was that the same for you or? I
think probably through like middle school and early high school, I was like, I'm going to go somewhere and get a computer science degree. And then I kind of got fascinated with other stuff. And so it was just one of those where like working with media, video, audio always kind of fascinated me. And then there was a moment where they got me to do the morning announcements at our high school.
I did those too, but for a totally different reason.
Yeah, I was doing them, and it was like a rotation of a few of us, but it was one where I'm like, oh, I get to talk into a microphone and be kind of obnoxious and have some fun with it.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, this is kind of cool. Like, what if I kind of go this route for things? And then I had gone to a different high school for my junior and senior year, and it was the Indiana Academy for Science, Mathematics, and Humanities. At the time, it was completely free. If you were a resident of Indiana, you had to apply to it, but it was a state-run public high school on Ball State University's campus, and they used one of the old residence halls to basically house us. And so that was one where, you know, you apply, and once you get accepted, then you're taking kind of things in more of a collegiate format. And since I lived in the middle of nowhere at the time, I kind of saw this as a way to go, oh, I can actually like have a social life.
Yeah, right. Oh my
and gosh. You know, and also, I mean, it was the academic rigor was going to be a little tougher than my school and that. And so I ended up there and, you know, got into doing a little bit more with media work and such, mostly just like little video projects. Cause by then I had a fairly new computer and we had some equipment that I could mess with. So there was like a couple projects that I did that were, you know, at the time, like iMovie projects and such. But they had a May term for both years that I was there, and you could go do an internship. And so I did one at WIPB TV, which is the PBS station in Muncie. And then I did a internship at IPR, which is Indiana Public Radio, which is the NPR station for East Central Indiana. Okay. And so for both of those, they actually like had me working.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, for TV, I mean, a lot of it was kind of shadowing and following along.
Sure.
But then, you know, there was a couple times where it was like, oh, yeah, we're going to do this show and you're going to work one of the cameras.
That's so cool.
And so, yeah, I mean, it was a studio show and it's really kind of just hold it, you know, and make sure that you're paying attention for when it's like your turn to you know, do that. But it was still at that kind of experience and the fact that these are people that are academic adjacent because it was in the teleplex on campus, that they were like willing to just, you know, take some time and work with a high school kid.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, my senior year, I did one at IPR and there was a point where they were having me do underwriter reads.
Oh,
and
fun.
Such. And so I had to do like the quote unquote NPR voice where everything was well enunciated.
I was just going to say your auctioneer enunciation must be like on point.
It was one where, I mean, I remember, and you know, it's been 20 plus years at this point, but I remember getting, you know, kind of corrected in a constructive way. That when I had to do the FCC reads at the top of the hour with all the various call letters, I kind of ran through and didn't really say W as clear as I needed to. And so that was where it was like, yeah, make sure you're doing that because, you know, we have sort of a standard here.
Yeah.
You know, as opposed to like, you know, your typical radio station with like the morning zoo show or whatever. And it's like, they're barely doing their FCC call letters as it is.
I mean, at that hour, they're probably barely caffeinated enough to think for themselves, let alone actually enunciate properly.
Yeah. So I just really enjoyed this. And I was like, oh, you know, like I enjoy computers, but I want to get into broadcasting. And I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do, but there was a part of me that probably was a little bit of the ego that wanted to be the on-air talent in some capacity.
Okay, this is news to me because like in all of our previous discussions, it was very no, I'm behind the camera. I do not want to be the talent.
Yeah.
Oh,
it was a little bit of like I could do this. You know, I could basically turn it on and be kind of obnoxious and like that. And then, you know, the other part of me was like, I like making things. I like solving puzzles. I like, you know, creating things. And so it was like, well, I also want to do that. And so it's like, I don't want to do both at the same time because that's a lot of work.
Right.
And so, yeah, I ended up going to Ball State for their telecommunications program. Pretty good program, I would say. You know, the gripe I have in terms of higher ed is just that we admitted a lot of folks and again, nowhere for graduates to necessarily end up as a whole.
Right. Well, in your case, like, did you have a clear goal in mind? Like, okay, I'm going to graduate this program and then go do this. Or was there a sense of that? Because in my field of work, I mean, it's basically, okay, you're either going to go perform or you're going to teach. And that is what we're, like, for lack of better expression, grooming you to do. In some cases, that's literal. But, you know, we go into our lessons and, we're just like, okay, well, I'm a performance track, so I'm going to be very intense about learning all this repertoire and this and that so that I can go play in an orchestra. Is that kind of the same for you? Like, did you have a very clear goal in mind, or was it just sort of, I'm going to get this degree and see what happens?
Yeah, and I think the part that's interesting is, so like, and we'll get to it later, is just working in higher ed. I've seen like this sort of how the sausage gets made for these kind of degrees in different ways. So like some schools will combine what we used to call the telecommunications program and the journalism program into just journalism. Because it's like, well, you want to do things on TV, so
yeah,
the bulk of it is that. Yeah. Ours was big enough that we had separate. So journalism focused more on the print side, a little bit of online media and that, but it was a completely separate degree program. I mean, still under the same College of Communications, but that was a separate thing. For TCOM, which again, I think they've since changed the name of the degree, you would pick an option when you went through. And so they had like a sales option. So this is I want to work at a TV and radio station and sell ad space, or I want to get into the advertising side of the media business. They had a film and TV studies program, which that was I really like analyzing the media and I want to be unemployable. And I say that because two of my best friends went through that program.
Oh, it's like majoring in music theory. Exactly what do you propose to do with a music theory degree? No offense to the theorists that are listening to this right now, but seriously, what the hell were you thinking?
I mean, I would say they had the most fun classes because it really was just like, let's talk about like why somebody made this.
Oh, don't get me wrong. Yeah. I mean, my music theory courses, and I'm like, my sordid history with music theory is long, but the 101 on it is just that I hated it until I loved it. And then what I learned, like when I really, like, it started to click for me, it was an endless problem to solve. And it just made my gears turn. I was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. Do I see myself doing this for a living? Absolutely fucking not. Because like the only people who employ theorists are universities usually.
So then the others that they had were news, and that was basically, you want to do something news related. It was sort of this is as close to journalism as we're going to get. And then there was production, which is it's basically, that was like the general interest degree.
Okay.
So that would be, I want to work at a TV station. I want to work at a radio station. I want to work for a, film company. I want to do stuff in front of the camera, behind the camera, anything. Basically, that's the if you're going to go through and just make sure you can find a job, that's the one.
Yeah.
And then the last one was multimedia. And multimedia basically was, you took production and you pulled out a couple of like classes that focused on the nitty gritty of the studio work and such, or that, and you replaced them with more web stuff, because again, this was the mid 2000s. So I mean, I had a class that focused on making DVD menus.
A whole class.
Well, it was talking about it was interactivity, it was interface design. I mean, it was a mix of and some of it was you had to make something and then you would critique it. You would share it with the class, because at that time, I mean, if you think about it, there was no online streaming video. There was no.
No, it was all DVD.
So the thing is, you would go, oh, well, of course, Hollywood is going to make menus for DVDs. But the thing is, if you're doing like corporate video, there was, I mean, we had a couple courses where they were talking about corporate video, where it's like, the lame like company training videos and promotion things. Someone still has to make and edit that and produce it, and
I suppose those menus would be different than your average, just sort of like, hey, we're going to watch this movie on this DVD kind of thing, because the logic is different, right?
Yeah, I mean, it might
the
be
end game is different.
Yeah, I mean, it might be that you're organizing it based on the content. Some of it again is just that class kind of dovetailed from just doing design of those to a lot of just interactivity. I remember something that kept being talked about at that time, and me being a punk, teenage / early 20s, bozo.
I can't imagine either of those words applying to you, for the record. Like,
well,
you seem pretty put together, and even back then, and of course the context of this is that, we've been together for years at this point. I just don't see you being a punk or a bozo.
Well, but they were really hammering home the point of interactive TV. And it was, I mean, we were designing stuff for interactive. It was like, what if in the future again, this is something that it took a while for it to really materialize. So like, credit where credit's due to some of the faculty and some of the other folks, but it took a while, is the idea of like, what if you just get in front of your TV and you can like pick what you want to watch instead of just channel surfing? Or you have this like menu where you can have like news at your fingertips and just, weather and any information right then and there. And so there was like discussions about like, how do you design for this? And, a lot of the creative ideas that we were coming up with didn't necessarily come to fruition in quite this way because, none of us were thinking about how can we like, just dick ads in there, or how can we like, make it where you're stuck in our little system because, all of us were naive college students that were focusing on like, content that we enjoyed and, wanting something that like looked really nice and all that. But I mean, it really looks a lot like streaming now in some ways.
Yeah. Which sort of leads us to like why we're here on the show in the first place is just, so many things had such a bright future for a really long time until they didn't, like you said it yourself, like dicking ads into everything. And it's true. It's pervasive. You cannot avoid it at this point. And so, I mean, obviously in episode 0, we talk about my complete disillusion with the music industry. I feel like we're sort of coming up on that for you. Like that, those sorts of things seem to have changed the direction of your career. Because by all accounts, it seems to me, objectively listening to your story, that you should be working in tech, or you should be working in television, or media, or, you know what I mean? Like a news station or something to that effect. I mean, you majored in it, so why are you not doing that, is the question.
Yeah, so again, like no, I would say I don't have as much saltiness towards, some of my programs as you or some of your other guests have had.
Right.
But it was one where there was definitely, because, and some of this is, I can't hate on it necessarily, but I had some really great faculty members, and I had some that just were like, okay, well, we have so many students going through this every year that like we'll grade you fairly and all, but there was no intentionality to help find work.
Yeah.
And and this isn't coming from like a sour grapes standpoint. This is more of just the fact is the numbers in hindsight didn't make sense.
Totally relatable.
And there were definitely haves and have-nots in the program too. And so if you weren't living in that building 24/7, you probably were off the radar of most people. Even if like, you and faculty got along. I mean, I was a good student. I, made time for office hours and, all that. And I learned a lot, like from just like me appreciating the media and having, what I would say decent media literacy. That's what I took away from it. And I got involved on a number of things on campus. Like I had, my freshman year, I actually worked, on our on-campus newscast. Again, I didn't get a chance to really do much on the production side of it because we had somebody that basically was there and they had done an internship at their home TV station. And instead of it being a let's learn and let's work together, it was like, no, I'm going to do this and no one else can. And especially not a freshman.
Oh, wow.
So, but we need content. We need, actual stories for this. So that was one where, I mean, I was doing stories for our newscast and it was the go check out a camera, check out lights, microphones and that. And basically you're going to produce a 2-minute, segment for our newscast. And so, I look back at some of those and it's like, the content I think was pretty good. There were some things that in hindsight I would do a little differently. I would do better.
Sure.
But I'm also looking at the amazing fact that like nowadays I could take my phone, throw it on a tripod and put together a better production from just that.
Oh yeah. And I think that's where your two interests really meet, is just like this evolution of tech, like what is possible with your pocket computer, plus like what is the story that you want to tell, how are you going to define this thing, right? Which of course has everything to do with your everyday work now, right, in higher ed.
Oh yeah, and we'll get to that, but yeah, so that was one of those where it was like I was shooting stuff, and I mean this is back when you had
the payoff is going to be great, by the way. Like thank you for sticking with us this long. I swear to God, the payoff is going to be epic.
I mean, this is a little bit of a meandering tale, but
yeah,
I think again, it's for anyone who's maybe late 30s or early 40s, like you were in college at this time, so you can relate.
I was just gonna say, all of this, it probably resonates in some way, shape, or form for a lot of our listenership.
Yeah. I had my sophomore year, I had a radio show. So I really liked working with the radio show that they had because basically it was you get an hour a week. You get to sit down, and as long as you don't cuss on the air and you say the FCC things, and this was not at IPR, this was on the campus radio station. And it was like, I mean, we had a little transmitter that covered the town, and we were carried on the campus cable station. So it was like, you know, some people tuned in, and it was just fun because, I mean, I think the one rule that they had that was kind of a neat thing was you can play whatever you want as long as it doesn't have profanities. Right. But for half the show, you have to play something out of our library.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
So it was like, cool. Well, I'm going to explore new music and then also include some of my own. And that was it. And so I did that for a while. And then I got hired as an RA. Because it was one of those where I was trying to go to school as cheaply as possible.
Right. Unlike some of us, like RIP my credit score.
And and it got it got me out of an awkward roommate situation. I got hired as a mid-year RA. And so as luck would have it, among all places I could end up, I was in one of the residence halls that was where they started getting into clustering students. So all the freshmen of a certain program they'd put together, because it was proven that if you're going to class with the same people you live with, that, you know, it's better for retention, it's better for community building. And so because I had gone through the honors college, I never lived in that building as a freshman.
Oh, wild. Okay.
And so
that makes sense.
Yeah, and so it was one of these where it's like, oh, you're gonna put me there? Okay. And I mean, I was just happy to have a job.
Yeah, no doubt.
But it was like really great because here I am at that point, like second semester my sophomore year, and then my junior year, I was in a building with basically my people. And so it was great because, I mean, basically any movie you could imagine, someone probably had it in the building and you could just borrow it from them.
Nice.
Or like, you know, I mean, we were definitely like sharing, I mean, music like crazy too, because...
Oh, you mean you were addicted to LimeWire as well?
No, see, campus had all those services blocked. So it was basically just the, hey, I got this CD, do you want to rip it? You know, kind of deal. And so it was a lot of just like, it was on your own of building those kind of friend networks and such to like be able to just share cool stuff. And so like that time, I mean, I made a lot of friends there that, I mean, I'm still friends with 20 years plus. And then kind of that led to me finally graduating in right around the time that the economy was crashing and no one was wanting to hire for any creative work. And I was like, this felt like a really smart idea.
Heard. Oh my God, heard.
So I was kind of sitting there going like, there's not really job prospects. Like, sure, the students that like lived in the building that were, you know, definitely the haves were you know, they found them places.
And by lived in the building, you don't mean literally like lived in your building. You mean like they were colossal brown noses who were just in the office all the time doing stuff?
Well,
or like, what do you like?
Well, oh yeah. And that's the thing is, I'm not like, none of this is to put shade on anyone.
Yeah.
You know, this is...
you can if you want. I just want to clarify for people listening.
No, because I think, again, out of some of these programs, everyone kind of takes from it what they want. Yeah. You know, they can dedicate time. I mean, obviously for me, you know, I had numerous interests outside of my degree. So it was like,
you had a life?
Yeah.
What's that like?
Well, and even again, like, I mean, the RA job, that took some time. And I mean, I made, like I said, some great friends there and such. But there were students that basically, it was like, oh, I'm doing the news option. They pretty much lived in the newsroom 24/7.
Sure.
Or they were like, I'm going to do this, and they're in the editing labs that long. Or they're doing, I mean, there were a lot of little side projects, a lot of things that were getting done. And it was basically just, do you have the time to dedicate to it?
Do you have the time? That's a different show.
Yeah. And then, I mean, and we had people doing amazing internships where they were working with like TV shows and such, you know, actual known things at the time. And I mean, that was one where, I mean, I had done an internship at a small production company. Like I had enough that it was like, I could be employable, but I think the part that really kind of hurt me was that I didn't have anyone necessarily advocating for me out in the real world. And then you throw in a bad economic or, you know, situation as a whole. Yeah. And no one's wanting to hire somebody that maybe is competent, but like doesn't bring a lot to the table or isn't a known quantity when they're already maybe getting rid of that position elsewhere.
So relatable.
So, and that was kind of the first like, oh, wait, you mean if I, you know, stayed in school and did well, I'm not going to get a good job? Like that was kind of the glass shattering.
Holy shit. it. Yeah.
So I stuck around for grad school
Uh-huh.
because at the time, and this is like the wrong way to do grad school. Being an RA, I had graduated, and that summer I was still on campus for a bit, and I had a couple grad hall directors. So the way they kind of structured it for their higher ed administration program, they had graduate assistant hall directors, and they were typically paired up with somebody that was full time. And so the grad assistant ones, they were taking classes and everything, and they were kind of doing like maybe 75% of the work of their full-time professional counterpart. And the grad hall directors were, again, just out of undergrad. So like they were definitely more relatable to us. So like I was close with a few and that. And so it was one of those where I was kind of hanging out in, the bars near campus one night that summer and ran into a couple of them. And, they were certainly a little hammered and go, hey, what are you graduated, didn't you? And I was like, yeah, I'm like kind of winding things down. They're like, you should come be a grad hall director next year. And I'm like,
because great ideas are had in bars. Yeah. Like everybody's bar ideas are the greatest ideas.
And I was like, and usually kind of for reference, those positions are filled like February.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what are you guys talking about? Like, they probably already have hired everyone. And they're like, no, this year it's been really tough. Like, we've had a lot of bad candidates. And you'd be awesome at that.
Were they bad hombres?
I mean, I don't.
Joking.
So anyway, so they suggested this. And I kind of got to thinking, I was like, well, maybe I should go to grad school. And, you don't necessarily pick the assistantship and then go to grad school. It's usually the other way around in most cases.
Okay.
And so, I applied and I was going to do a program. It was actually going to be the grad program that went with my undergrad. And it was the digital storytelling program. So the idea was...
That sounds woo-woo.
Yeah. But it's basically I want to have a master's in, media production.
Wait, so you have a master's in digital storytelling?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay. I was like, wait a minute, this is news to me.
No. So that was their program for that. And again, it was a lot of theory, a lot of just going like, I want to basically be an expert on how the media business works.
Okay.
And among other things. And I had gone, well, they have the option to do teaching as your assistantship. And I was like, that'd be really cool. Like, I can go teach the undergrad, like, production 101 class or, whatever. And so that was my thought. Let's just say that whole process of, like, applying, getting accepted and all that was a lot of, like, even though I was there, a lot of bad communication from communications people.
What?
And I just was like, I kind of did some thinking and I'm like, this is not going to make me more marketable. That I need to find something that balances it. And so I actually then applied for the Information and Communication Sciences graduate program. And it was kind of a mix of a business degree, a comm studies degree, and then like a little bit of like IT.
Okay.
Yeah. And so got accepted and then went and got my assistantship in housing. And so the nice thing about the housing assistantship was they gave me a place to live. They gave me a meal plan. And then I also got the standard stipend.
Nice.
So it was basically my living expenses were almost nothing for grad school.
Yeah, right.
And so, ended up moving onto campus, was running a building for the 2 years and that. Courses, I really enjoyed a lot of them because it was a variety of different content. I think that in hindsight, especially maybe now, there were definitely some that were pushing the hustle culture, business bro nonsense.
Ah, yes. Beginnings of the end for this country.
Oh yeah. We were reading some various books that, I'm going, oh yeah, we make fun of those now as and the part that when it came time to graduate that again, I really enjoyed it. I kind of was going there's a number of things that we've done that could interest me as a career path. And I sat down with the director and he was like, you got to get out of the dorms. And it was kind of what I'm supposed to just I think this was start of spring semester, my second year there. And I was like, so what? I'm just supposed to pull money out of my butt to pay for this? Not to mention leaving people that I've made friends with high and dry.
Yeah.
But it was that idea of you need to be all in on our stuff.
Okay.
And it was sort of, if you're not doing that, we're not necessarily going to help you. And, You know, and I feel like that's been the theme the whole time, where it's if you're trying to pay your way through school, no one cares.
Right.
No one, they're just like, and you know, it's I think that's what the disadvantage is it's like
100%.
you know, you're doing multiple things, you're bringing different experiences there. And you know, was I doing poorly in my courses? No. Was I definitely, I mean, I was still spending time, you know, in that department. I was getting things done. I was looking for opportunities. But yeah, the whole thing was basically like, no, we want you all the time. And I mean, I was like, well, also I'm kind of under contract right now. Like, I can't just like drop this.
Yeah.
And so it was just a really irritating thing to hear, because it was sort of like, oh, so you're more concerned that like I'm having to do two things.
Yeah.
And I think what also kind of in hindsight was really irritating was at that time, and some of it might have been trying to navigate the poor like economy.
Right.
They were really trying to push students to work in like consulting.
Oh, gross.
And this would have been not necessarily like McKinsey type consulting or anything like that, but more of a, oh, let's say so-and-so wants to build a data center. And so you're going to go in and tell them how to do it and that, which, you know, great. But it was kind of a one track. This is where we're pushing all of our students to go work at one company. And it was just one of those where I'm like, but what if I don't want to do that? Like the whole time you're talking about how this program can make us employable in a number of fields, a number of areas. And then the only path you have is to basically shove everyone here.
Oh, yeah. Oh, not unlike the music industry. You know, same shit. Like, oh, you can do all these things and this and that and the other thing. And then you get there, it's just like, oh, you're going to perform or you're going to teach. Like, okay, there's a lot of gray space in between those two things.
Yeah. So I realized once again I was on my own.
Okay.
And so I was applying to things like far and wide. And I was also going like, I'm not above applying for you know, student life hall director job or anything like that.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I technically have the experience for that.
Well, in a crappy economy, steady money is steady money.
Yeah.
It kind of didn't matter where it came from at the time.
Yeah.
That's
and
so
like,
relatable.
again, you know, there was some talk amongst people and it was like, oh, you're applying for those kind of jobs. Like, why? You can make so much more money doing other stuff.
Yeah, I got those two.
Yeah. And so what actually kind of the pathway that I had was I found a webmaster position at a small college. And it wasn't too far away, so it was like the person I was seeing at the time, like, cool, like we can still do the long distance thing. It's not too bad, and like you don't have to get on planes or anything like that.
Well, yeah.
And so I applied, and then I was like, well, I wonder what other jobs they have, like you know. And so I saw they had a hall director job, and I was like, okay, I'll apply for that too. Didn't get a call back for the webmaster job, even though their website sucked. Like it was one of those where part of me was kind of a, here's what it could look like.
Let me flex for you.
Yeah. But yeah, never got that call, but got the call back for the hall director job. And went in for an interview, basically was like, okay, I'm hired on the spot.
Oh, nice.
So it was like all of a sudden now I'm going, I have a job right out of college. I don't have to, you know, worry about this. Like I'm at least taken care of for that.
Right.
And some of it was like working out the logistics of, you know, moving there because, you know, it was my building that I was running was getting closed for renovations after that year. So they moved me into temporary housing for like a couple weeks over the summer. And then my new job started once somebody cleared out there. So credit to both institutions for, you know, kind of being flexible and working with me so I didn't have to like pack everything
homeless.
up.
Yeah. Oh my God.
And so yeah, so I was doing that for a couple of years. And I mean, this was at a very small college of like 1,000 students. So there was a bit of a culture shock going from, you know, a large university of like 20,000 down to that. You know,
I always forget that like there are schools that size, like in the middle and then on the very, very end.
Yeah. So like the building that I was running in grad school had about 450 students living in it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then I'm going to a campus where we have 1,000 students total.
Oh my God.
So that took some adjustments.
No doubt.
But it was one where, I mean, I got to do a lot there. And, you know, we had definitely like, you know, typical small college politics and drama and nonsense where you're just like, why does this place just keep like doing dumb things? And it's like, you know, my role was fine. I was supported. I had a good supervisor for a while, the one who hired me and such. I think she shielded us from a lot of the nonsense from the higher ups. And eventually it got to her and, you know, she was like, I want to get a job outside of higher ed.
The system will wear you down eventually.
Yeah.
Some of us quicker than others.
So she left and then we were without director residence life for like a semester.
Uh-huh.
And the thing is, the three of us that were working there at the time, I mean, all were pretty solid at what we were doing by then. Like, I think I was in year number 3. We had 2 others that were like in their second year, and we just all, as a team, could rely on each other.
Yeah.
And so, like, despite not having, you know, someone in charge, we managed to like continue things as is. And we were just, I mean, the dean of students was who we reported to instead. And so
being good at a job that you did not go to school for, imagine that.
Yeah.
You know.
And so, I mean, and I found different opportunities on campus to sort of bring in the media and IT things because
that's cool.
being on a small college campus, it's like you can just, you know, even as an employee, find those opportunities. Like I taught a workshop for some extra cash one time for, you know, about emerging tech. And it's kind of funny now because I just look at it and go, oh yeah, that's all what's just around now.
Right.
And then we had that the way they set it up, they had a fall semester and a spring semester with a January term in the middle. And so I co-taught a course looking at sort of mobile device usage and that. And this was like back in 2011. So that was kind of a fun one too.
You know, cooking up ways to get people more addicted to things.
Yeah.
That was probably like the baseline tenet of that syllabus, right?
No, at that time it was the more optimistic outlook.
Aw.
Yeah. You know, that we're going, yeah, there's a time and a place for it. But like the amount of things that you can do, especially with like interactivity in the classroom, you know, we were, again, this sort of utopian, optimistic, you know, time.
The good old days.
So, you know, as all this was going on, I was still writing my website. I was still covering kind of the changes. So, of course, you know, we had like the iPhone come out, the iPad come out, like all these, you know, new apps that could like try something new. I mean, venture capital money was flying around like crazy. So, like, everyone that had a good idea was getting funded, and like it was just a fun time to be around in like the early 2010s.
Sure.
Because it was like, oh, of course, like I'm going to go try out this new app or product or service because like it's in its purest form, and like maybe we weren't as jaded about like how they were going to try to make it worse.
Right. Well, they the proverbial they, hadn't thought of those things yet. They wanted to actually make things that were useful.
Well, and I think though, it was a lot of people maybe like myself that were making these apps and tools with like altruistic intentions.
Yeah.
And then once the money started running out, or they sold to someone, or this, I mean, the amount of times that it was like, oh yeah, this product got sold to Google, and Google shut it down and just basically kept the workers for their own stuff. I mean, that happened a lot. Or it's like, oh, this changed hands, and now, you know, the founder is no longer involved with it. Or, I mean, you look at like early Instagram, and it was just a nice little place to share photos with your friends. And, you know, at that time, it got bought by, at the time, like a blockbuster sale to Facebook for, I think it was $1 billion. And, you know, at that time, like $1 billion seemed like an insane thing to pay for a dumb little photo app.
Yeah. And now people just throw around billions like it's nothing.
Yeah. And it was like, over time, it was like, okay, well, you know, of course, you know, Facebook is still sort of trustworthy, you know, in like 2012, 2013.
I'm sorry, Facebook and trustworthy in the same sentence nowadays is just like gallows humor level comical.
But that was the thing where it was like, if a new service came out that seemed kind of interesting, most people would just sign up for it and try it. I mean, I was on Vine, I was on, you know, some of these others. I mean, I was on Twitter probably like within 6 months of it being out there.
Oh, wow.
You know, and so there was just this idea of like everything was interesting and worth trying because we could see what we could do with all these, you know, mobile devices and the web and that.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, while I was kind of watching that world, you know, I was doing the hall director gig, which was great because it was like, oh, I had a nice high-speed internet connection in my apartment.
Yeah.
You know, that was provided by the school.
Sure.
And a lot of downtime just to mess around on the internet and that. And so it was like, yeah. And then with some of my work here and there, you know, on campus, we got a new director residence life in, who basically, his way of greeting us, again, 3 people that were basically running the department for 6 months, was to give us a 5-page single-spaced document of expectations.
Are you serious?
That was his welcome.
Oh my god.
And it was already like,
clearly he doesn't know a damn thing about managing people.
Yeah, and it was just one of those where it was like, you know, changing everything.
Uh-huh.
And I think the lesson that I had learned prior to that was coming again from a large university with like tons of resources, doing things a certain way, and getting in there initially. The boss who hired me originally basically goes, okay, I get there's a lot of stuff that you guys are going to want to change, and you might not like how it's done, or you might not understand, but basically this first year, just trust me and follow everything that we have. And then after the first year, we can talk about changing things. Right. Because there's probably something that's been done a certain way for a reason.
Right. You need perspective.
Yeah, and I mean, she had worked at a lot of large, heavy hitter universities prior to this, so like she was kind of helping us navigate the sort of, you know, small school politics and all that. And so that was like really nice in a way that at the time I was like, what do you mean we can't change stuff? Like, this is stupid. And then over time I'm like, nope, she really wanted us to get a lay of the land first and understand what we were dealing with.
Right. In other words, you need to know where the power dynamics lie and who to not piss off.
Yeah.
Now we're getting into my neck of the woods.
Yeah. So like I said, new guy comes in and he does not do that at all. And we're all sitting there going like, why are you trying to change everything? I mean, and it was even silly stuff. So this was a job that maybe paid like low 30s.
Yeah.
And also we were working with students all day. So like the common attire for a lot of those jobs was like
street clothes.
Yeah, like jeans and maybe something with a collar was like kind of the go-to for men.
Yeah, of course.
You know, and whatever the women equivalent. Yeah. And so it was like that was the case. And obviously for like formal events or important functions, you know, we dress up some. But it's like my office is basically down the hall from my apartment. Yeah. Like, you know, and it's not like I wasn't wearing stuff that was unprofessional. But it was one where like if I was showing up in like, you know, dress pants and like dress shirt and maybe a tie or something, the students would be like, look at this, you know, dork.
Dude, I can't even remember a single day when any of my RAs, and I was a deskie for some years, ever showed up in like business casual attire.
Well, yeah, but I mean the RAs especially, because they could just wear a t-shirt and jeans.
But even hall directors.
Yeah,
like,
that's the thing.
The desk, so like where I worked, the desk was like right next to the hall director's office, and then their apartment was the next door down. And I feel like that's a pretty
similar setup. Yeah.
And I never ever saw the hall director in like business casual.
Yeah.
You know, she was always in street clothes. So like the whole concept makes me laugh.
Yeah. So it was like, oh, you will wear all this. Maybe we'll let you wear jeans on Fridays.
Are you freaking kidding me?
And then it was like the other thing was that we had adjusted hours because, like again, our previous director was like, you guys work late. Some nights, you know, you sometimes have to deal with crisis situations, you know, and that, like, obviously, like, you know, we weren't walking around the building at like 2 a.m. The RAs were
in business casual,
right? The RAs were, but if the RAs were like, "Hey, I got a situation, we got to call an ambulance or something like that," it's like, "Yeah, I'm going to be up and I'm going to be doing some paperwork and I'm going to be following up with that
in your PJs."
Yeah. And so, like, but that was the thing is, like, he goes, you know, on top of, like, attire, it was now you're going to be in the office at 8 and you're going to leave at 5.
Oh, Lord. On
top of being on, you know, duty once a week or whatever. And, like, it just was one of those that was, like, dude didn't understand the trade-offs. Because especially when there's 3 of us, like, we were on call a lot more than, say, a larger university. And so it was one of these where it's like, I got to get out of here. And I want to say that like he started in June and was just like, again, just really pompous and really like condescending in some ways. Like no one liked him, even outside of our department. I mean, the RAs were making fun of him like at the start of the next school year.
I'll bet.
And so I was applying to anything I could find, anything tech related, anything higher ed related. Like I had a couple interviews. I want to say one was a job doing like marketing and like graphic design for like parking services at a university. Yeah. And it was like,
which you would have killed, by the way.
Right. But it's like, that's an area that no one likes regardless. Yeah. So it's like, fine. But what ended up happening was, they had, within the IT department at this institution, they had, someone leave. And I was kind of pals with the IT director at the time because, you know, we had kind of crossed paths in various like little workshops and events and all. And I was on a committee with her and I just happened to see that it was posted. I don't remember why, because I wasn't necessarily looking, but it just came up on the website. And also I found out that the whole website side of the house was not done through IT. It was done through our marketing office.
As so many are.
Yeah. And so that was why basically they didn't really want somebody with IT experience.
Oh, sure.
And they ended up just paying an outside company to redo it.
And run it on Wix.
And so anyway, so I, you know, applied and and she just called my office like almost immediately after the stuff came through and was
Oh,
like,
really?
hey, why didn't you do this sooner?
Aw.
Like, basically, I couldn't tell you,
Right.
but like
Mm-hmm.
that should like
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So then I was there for a little while doing student event support. It was kind of a combined position where you'd start the day later, go into the evening, and then you would do either event setup with the tech there or also student support. So it was students have issues. Basically, it's an late evening help desk.
Gotcha.
And so I was doing that for a while, and then we had some other shakeups in the department, and I moved over to be the network admin. And the thing is, I was going like, I don't know anything about this, and our previous network admin moved into being the server admin. So he was like, I'll get you up to speed. Like, I know that you can figure stuff out, and like I like working with you, so like we'll do this together.
Right.
Because I know that I can hand this off to you. And because we also, for what they pay, we're not going to be able to get somebody out from the outside.
Right. So again, a job that has everything to do with your degree.
Yeah.
Clearly.
Well, and here's the funny thing. In some ways, this actually did have to do with my master's degree.
Oh, okay, okay.
Because we did have a class where we were basically doing the Cisco CCNA like certifications, just not the actual one where you would get it. It was more of they just did it for free in the course. And even though we didn't use Cisco equipment there, it was a lot of the networking concepts and stuff. And at the time, I hated the course, which is the irony.
Yeah.
That was like the worst class that I had in grad school too.
Oh my God.
And so lo and behold, I'm going like, oh, but you're going to pay me more and like I get to just keep working here? Cool.
Okay. I guess I'll get your stupid cert.
Well, and that's the thing is I didn't have to get it because we weren't a Cisco organization.
Oh, okay.
And they were more just going like, hey, if Eric can figure this stuff out and, his predecessor basically said, cool, good enough for us.
Okay.
Yeah. And so then I was there for probably about 7 years in that role.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, the one thing that kind of was rough was that the IT department was not well funded. And in anything these days, you need to fund your IT department.
Well, tech is expensive.
Yeah, tech is expensive. And we had
and even back then, tech was expensive.
Oh, yeah. And we had CFOs that didn't really understand that. They're like, why can't you just go down to Walmart and buy a router for like $30?
Wait a minute. You mean the bean counters had no idea how your job works?
And
say it ain't so.
And it got worse when the IT director that hired me moved into a different role. She became the registrar.
Oh, okay.
Because it was just a matter of that role was vacant. She worked with data a lot and was an alum and is like, we need somebody in here who knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
And so, and I mean, I think if anything, my time at that institution was learning it doesn't matter what credentials you have. It's basically just, can you fill a need somewhere?
Yeah.
Like,
right.
honestly, I kind of sit there and go, if I had stuck around there, it's like, what role could I have picked up? Could I have been like the director of security? Could I have been like in charge of like, this and that? I mean, one of my colleagues moved over to institutional advancement and is now being like, kind of moved out of there, now reports to the president as their like data and analytics person.
Right, right.
And he was fixing computers right out of college there.
Yeah. And I think in alignment with like the overall messaging of this podcast, right? If you looked at just your trajectory objectively, like a lot of people would have pigeonholed into, oh, this is going to be a tech bro. You would have turned into like somebody that is into hustle culture and taking like ice plunges and like rah, 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 996 work week, whatever. Bleh. But instead of that, you used your brain and you're just like, oh wait, okay. So all of this is bullshit, and you saw that really early, and so now it's an interesting sort of roundabout way to get to where you are now.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, again, like I said, the realization that it's like, oh, basically all the people that I'm working with in different capacities are going, well, Eric's not an asshole. So, like...
Can confirm, audience. Can confirm Eric is not an asshole.
But I feel like that honestly had more kind of set me up for success.
Sure.
Than what degree I had or what background once I was in. And it was kind of just like, oh, there's a job that's open. Do we think you can do it? Cool. We'll move you over to that.
Right.
And the funny thing was like...
Back before AI screened all of the resumes.
Well, and some of it was not even necessarily like the resume process. If you're staying within the same institution, was just
Right.
like kind of a handshake agreement.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we actually, once we met, and at that time, our IT department was in a really rough spot, like coming out of COVID, because they just didn't pay their help desk people at all. So that was a revolving door. And then anyone else who was down there basically had to cover. And so I think there was a point where like right after like COVID started, we maybe had 5 people on a team that normally has like 10.
Yeah. Well, and I remember you telling me stories of like duct tape and paper clips and hope
Yeah.
about like the network shit that you set up on campus during COVID.
Yeah.
Right. Like bouncing signal from building to building using basically just,
I mean,
MacGyver level technology.
I mean, it was one where, because again, like we would get new computers, we would
Yeah.
get maybe expensive software packages, but at that particular place, the network was not viewed as important. Even though everyone wanted to have good internet, and the students would complain about Wi-Fi coverage in their rooms.
That makes no sense.
But like, yeah, we of course, cinder block buildings, there were lots of complaints about that.
Yeah.
And so I was going, we need to like do this the right way. And they're like, we don't want to spend $250,000 to do this.
Right.
You can maybe get 50.
Oh.
And so, I mean,
$50 or $50 million?
50,000.
Oh, $50,000. Okay,
Yeah.
so somewhere in the middle then.
Yeah.
Okay. See, in music, they would be like, "Oh, well, we need $250,000 to do this," and then the CFO would come down and be like, "Here's a cupcake."
Yeah, but it was kind of like that, where it was the buying stuff in phases, going like, okay, well, can we make something work? And
Yeah.
so, I mean, I was really proud of what was done with the budget. Because basically it was going, I'm going to put a Wi-Fi access point in every other student room and just run them like low power and all. But the idea was like, there's just going to be coverage everywhere. And, we went with something a little cheaper so it didn't have quite as much management as say like a better solution. But at the time, again, there just wasn't the support. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, we took care of what we did. And there were, like I said, there was a lot of mismanagement, a lot of like leadership issues within our department by the time like my tenure there sort of was wrapping up.
Yeah. And you were being so nice, by the way. Like, you can cuss on this podcast.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, so that was, I mean, we started, seeing each other, and at that time it was like, again, coming out of COVID, and they fired our director.
Oh, Jesus.
And it was partially because he just didn't do anything. He was older and basically said, "Oh yeah, I'm working from home now because like I'm,
frail
and at risk." Yeah. But it turns out he just wasn't doing anything.
Shock.
Yeah. And his assistant director was doing a lot of the work. And then they made his assistant director the interim, which made sense.
Right.
But it really was then turning into the like power trip of sorts, where it was just it was very obvious that like he knew some stuff about tech, but then was like clueless on others, and would then go in and try to tell people what to do rather than going like, I'm trusting the people that have been here.
Sure.
And he was hired like shortly after I started. So like he was there the whole time that all of this was going on. And yeah, over time, like, your whole situation happened where it was like, oh, I'm fine working. And so I was like, well, I don't necessarily love where I'm at. But it's a known quantity. It's the devil,
Yeah, and I mean, regarding that situation, I was genuinely shocked when you were just like, yeah, let's move to Fort Wayne. Because you had been at your then job for like, what, 8 years or something like that?
Well, I started as a hall director in 2010, and then I left there in 2022.
Yeah, so like, color me shocked that you even wanted to move out to relative BFE with me.
Well,
but
again,
Fort Wayne isn't that small.
No, but I had been applying for a few different jobs. I mean, I got really close in some to, like I was the
oh yeah, I remember you telling me about the swings and misses.
Yeah, like I was, one of the jobs I was going to do was basically network engineering at T-Mobile.
Oh yeah, okay.
And because this was like right after they were buying Sprint, and so they were doing a lot of consolidation and a lot of that, and they had a big, office in Indianapolis, and so it was okay, well, even though there's going to be some training, like you understand our business, you understand what we're doing.
Yeah.
You've worked with a couple of our people for like institutional things.
Yeah, there was a minute there where I thought for sure you were going to get that gig, because didn't you know somebody there too?
Yeah, who kind of got me in the door.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was the runner up because, as it turns out, they had one other candidate that was already working in a different area.
Yeah. And I think that's so indicative of like the job market even now.
And I will say, to their credit, to the folks that interviewed me and worked with me and all that,
Yeah.
they at least followed up with me and told me, because I feel like you don't get that a lot. You know,
Oh, dude. I mean, your friend that's had like what 5 or 6 round interviews or whatever, like that's insane. You know, like it's like next to impossible to get a job, even if you want one. These days.
And I think, you know, based on some of the conversations between my contact and some of the folks like during the interview process, they really had different views of what they wanted to do for that location in Indy versus what corporate wanted after the merger kind of got settled and all. And so then, I mean, we find out now that a lot of the folks that like I had talked with and worked with are no longer employed there because of just, again, layoffs and sort of the corporate machine. And so, yeah, I was kind of just maybe discouraged that I was like, I have been doing, you know, various IT work. Yeah. I have a pretty broad background. And so that was where, when you had to find a new job, I was like, well, you know, I never looked for work up here, so let's see. And basically, one of the comparable institutions to where I was at had a job posting, and it was a step backwards in some ways because it was a help desk position. But it was like, well, you know, I can at least see it could be a landing spot.
Right.
And I just, you know, I reached out and got like a call back, like the next day.
Yeah.
And they were like, we want to interview you. And so, are you free tomorrow to do an interview, like just over Teams?
Right.
And I was like, oh, sure. Okay. You know, and so, yeah, like, I guess I kind of threw that in there maybe half-heartedly in some ways.
Yeah.
And
I don't blame you for that, for the record.
Yeah. Because it was more of a just what if.
Yeah.
Like, you know, if I'm going to see what's out there, like, maybe betting on us is worth a try.
Yeah, sure.
And
I think it's worked out pretty nice.
Yeah. And, like, interview was great. I mean, basically, it was kind of I think, you know, I liked what they were offering. And then they, you know, must have liked me because like I got home and I got a call back that was like, hey, so we want to offer you the job.
Well, and I remember like we were on our way out the door for vacation, I think at that point, right?
Yeah. And so they were like, we'll send you all the stuff, we'll get you going and all. And so it's like, I mean, I've been there ever since. And it's been nice. I mean, I don't love the state of tech right now.
Right.
But the folks that I'm working with have been good. So that's where I feel like staying in higher ed for me, it's kind of funny because like I hear your complaints and I see some of the drama, especially, you know, with like some of the undergrad programs, some of the changes and challenges for that. And so I'm going like, this isn't necessarily wrong.
Right.
You know, I'm more working with programs that are a little more intentional with, you know, going, can we make students employable? You know, a lot of specific health sciences things and that, and, you know, just going, okay, if you go through this, you're going to do this job. Yeah. And the students kind of know where they're at. But the broad general things of like, I like music. Like, great, you're going to learn all kinds of stuff. But what's the job?
Right.
You know, and or like, again, I like media. And you go, you know, I mean, my heart breaks with the way the media industry has gotten because, you know, everything's consolidated. Local media is basically dead or a zombie at this point because of just consolidation. I mean, when, you know, you look at like, it used to be if you go in production, like the easy thing would always be, I'm going to go work at a local TV station. Sure. It's not glamorous.
No, but it's work.
Yeah, it's not exciting, but generally it's like you get to do a lot of stuff. You're in a small market. You might be on the air and doing some production work or, you know, that. And folks would maybe start in like a, you know, middle of nowhere podunk market, do that for a couple of years, move up to maybe something that's like, you know, maybe 100th largest market. Yeah. Do that for a couple of years, and then, you know, you work your way up. The idea is like, if you find a spot where you want to stay, you stay there. Because like I know people that like they just stuck around like the Indianapolis market because I think they were like 25th largest at the time. Right. So it's like, okay, you're getting paid okay money, and you know you're getting, you know, some nice toys to play with.
Sure. And I think what you're really describing there in so many ways is, you know, sort of the proverbial American dream, right? Like you go to school with this thought that you're going to be this thing. And so many of us, like, for better or worse, use that to define ourselves, you know, like, I mean, I remember when I switched gears from being in higher ed to being in sales, like full time, I had like a serious come to Jesus about like, am I even a musician anymore? Like, am I even a trumpet player anymore? So like in all of your, like, basically the last hour has just been like, Eric knows how to pivot. Like, that's the takeaway is like, Eric knows how to pivot on a dime all the time and just to, you know, do things that are meaningful or to at least keep the bills paid. So do you feel like there was a time or maybe a couple times along the way that you lost yourself or that you just were like so disillusioned with like, okay, well, this isn't the dream, but I'm doing a thing.
I think probably like the time when I was doing the hall director gig and like trying to get the heck out of there, was more of a like, did I screw myself over by going into this job?
Yeah.
Like out of like grad school, did I not do the sort of first step that should have been then setting me up for the rest of my career?
Yeah.
Which turns out, I mean, that would have been bogus anyway, because I feel like if I had ended up somewhere, it's like, well, what job existed, coming out of the recession?
And would it have lasted?
Yeah.
Is the other thing.
I mean, that's the thing is I look at like now, it's like the amount of people that are still going into like IT related jobs. Mm-hmm. And because I mean, I've had people that are like, why are you doing this right now? Like you could do so much better.
Oh,
or
yeah.
you could go work for an MSP, managed service provider where, basically you're a gun for hire doing IT work somewhere. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I get that, but like I would much rather have some stability and work with good people, than trying to chase every dollar. Yeah. And I know that probably comes from a little bit of a place of privilege, because there are some places where it's like you have to chase every dollar regardless of industry.
That's my job.
But I just sit there and go like the amount of people that are working in IT that are just treated as disposable. Yeah. That it's like, especially if you're like a contractor of some sort.
Oh my God, right.
It's just like, okay, well, you're the help and, fix this and then leave.
Yeah.
And again, like there are obviously exceptions to this, but I just kind of sit there and I look and I'm like, I've built relationships with coworkers for, this, that, and the other. They know that it's like, I don't know all the answers, but I can at least find them. And, that's something that it's like, they're going to go to me and I'm not going to be a jerk to them. Yeah. And so that's kind of where it's like, I've sort of detached my identity at work with who I am as a person too. Yeah.
And I think, okay, so that brings me to my next question is like, how do you cope with, and maybe you don't find the rage that I do, how do you cope with this, I guess, previous bill of goods that, sort of society fed us, like, oh, you're going to go to college and then you're going to go to do this and you're going to have a good job and live happily ever after, yay, with what actually happened.
Yeah.
Right? How do you cope with that? Or do you have rage about that?
No, I think it's just disappointment, because it's like the world in 2007, 2008, right? Like was a lot more promising for a lot of the interests that I had.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we look at it like I could have gotten a job doing a radio show.
Sure.
But nowadays it's like, how many radio stations are owned by like 3 companies?
Right.
And they're programmed remotely, or they're programmed where it's like, we don't, it used to be that if you were working in media, that there was some buy-in for where you were at. Mm-hmm. And the idea of like, even if you're doing the production side of things, you would get to pick out the graphics, you'd pick out the music, you'd pick out what the set looks like and that. And nowadays, it's like, even in the TV world, it's like 5 companies own most TV stations in the US. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, you may have some combination of those in your market, but it's like, you could go to any city, and if it has the same owner as that, you might get the exact same graphics. It's like the people are going to be the only thing that's different, but everything else is cookie cutter. And so there's no like care of the local markets anymore. And so in some ways it's like, we're going to create cookie cutter stories and just feed them out to a few stations here and there. We're going to do this. And so it's like, if you're watching, like, again, like if you're watching the news in, say, like Fort Wayne, you would get basically the same presentation as like a TV station in Cedar Rapids or a TV station in like, Albuquerque, and so it's like, obviously the content's going to be a little different, but on top of that, you've cut down the number of on-air talent, you've cut down reporters in the field, and so it just becomes they're leaning more into what can we just fill the time with,
right?
And so it becomes crime blotter, it becomes sensational stories, even when you're not trying to have a tabloid program. And so that's kind of where I got disillusioned, where it's like, oh, it used to be that like somebody ran an independent station, that maybe was owned by a family or owned by like a small group that maybe owned like 2 TV stations. And it was like, there was care of going like, we give a damn about this. And now it's just like, yeah, everything's cookie cutter.
Right.
And, and on top of that, I mean, I think, even a small market like here, this is, I think like 110 or so. People would have to work their way up. So like the reporters in the field would still seem like adults. The weekend anchors would be adults.
Right.
And now, I don't watch the news that often, but it's like, if I turn it on, I'm like, these look like, kids.
Yeah. Right.
Like, they're just out of school, and great for them for getting that opportunity. I mean, I'm not, sour about that, but it's just that in some ways, I heard there was like a story that went around that like the one TV station in Colorado Springs was paying $15 an hour for a multimedia journalist. So that would be like the person, making a story out in the field all by themselves.
Right.
And I'm just like, cool. So you're going to, make me go put together a story, edit it, do all that. And you're going to pay me less than like, jobs that require no real skills.
Yeah.
And like, again, no shade to people that are doing, work like, hourly jobs,
right.
retail, restaurants, all that. Because certainly there's time and there's labor and all that. But it's just
absolutely.
But it's one of those where it's like, oh, so you want me to have all these qualifications and a college degree and this and that, and then you're not going to pay me.
Oh, it's like adjunct work.
Yeah.
I could get on a soapbox about that. I'm going to try not to. But, the fact that there are people with doctorates that are getting paid less than someone who works at Arby's.
Yeah.
And then they have to cobble together 2 or 3 of those positions just to make a living, which I guess, I don't know, it might answer my next question for you, which is, if you could go back and do it again, would you do anything differently?
I mean, that's the thing is, because I've thought back and forth of like what degree to get or what would I have done differently.
Right.
And like, there's a part of me, because I was actually talking with a friend about this who was lamenting kind of her background.
Sure.
And it was I think having worked at 2 very small institutions, I wonder if a place like that might have been better for me, because it's just like you have a smaller class of students. You have maybe faculty that might be advocating a little bit better, because it's like, well, it's us against the world, as opposed to being
we need to get people employed.
Yeah. And like, I mean, and that's the thing is that where I was before, they had a damn good little journalism program for their size. And I mean, they were placing people, but again, I'm sitting there going like, the part that kind of is sad is it's not necessarily blaming the institutions in my case.
Yeah.
It's the industry once you get out is not what it used to be.
Oh, of course.
And in some ways that's a good thing, because, nowadays everybody has a 4K camera in their pocket.
Yeah.
And the ability to edit video and the ability to do things like that. So it's not gate kept, but like we still, I think, need people to be able to go to encourage media literacy, to encourage people to not necessarily believe everything they see, or to ask those, secondary questions. And that's what we're lacking as a whole, is like you democratized video creation, but not really the thought behind it.
Yeah. And speaking of believing everything that you see, I mean, I think now more than ever, we're sort of suffering at the hands of computers. Like AI is just, I mean, it's really, in my opinion, kind of screwed us over in so many ways. I mean, as a musician, like, I don't really fear AI because my specific job is not able to be done by AI. Like, AI can't play trumpet. But in your field, I think there's a few different aspects from where I'm sitting, AI has killed telecom. Like, number one, you can't believe anything you see on the internet at all.
Yeah.
Like, that's contributed significantly to my pulling away from social media in the first place, which is, again, why it's funny that I'm just like, I'm not on TikTok anymore. But then the other thing is just like, even on the tech side of things, like, do you feel threatened by the existence of AI taking over what you do?
Well, and I guess again, like, my job is not glamorous necessarily. I'm not doing software development or anything like that. Like, I think those are the people that are scared right now, because like within the last couple of weeks, everything has been like, oh, you can just have like, Claude write all your software. We can make an app in like an afternoon.
We're gonna like vibe code, bro.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the thing is like, and it's not to say that that's wrong, because I think for like programming that like AI can be helpful in that way. I know there's some people that are like, I have an idea, I'm going to use AI to do the first draft, and then I'm going to go in and kind of work through it and test it, because it's like, well, in some ways, quote unquote, a computer would know how a computer should expect programming.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it would be its native language.
Yeah, but the thing is that I think that we're losing with AI as a whole is, again, just like kind of this media literacy aspect that's lacking on that side of things, is no one's knowing how it's made or why. Where you'll have, oh, the LLM generated this, and you just believe it. There's no fact checking. There's no understanding where that work came from. And, it's like, basically, it's like, I mean, you probably remember, like, in school, if you were doing math problems, it was always, oh, you need to show your work or you're not going to get credit.
That.
Yeah. But I think that's the thing is, like, looking at, like, video production, it's like, again, if you were doing a news story or something like that, there was a point where it's like, you need to have good sources. You need to have a well kind of articulated thought. You need to decide like what you want to inform the viewer so that they take away from it. And nowadays it's like somebody puts something, they're like, I just want to be viral. I just want this to be,
clickbait.
Yeah. And the fact that people are okay with that, the fact that, and again, this is why, you look at like, some of this is definitely the remnants of the 24-hour cable news kind of cycle, where instead of it being boring, it became entertainment. And then you look at just the fact that, like, again, watching like some local news here and there, you just sit there and go, oh, you reported on this. Well, as a viewer, I have like 3 questions that you didn't even get into. And that's what infuriates me more than anything else, is just the fact that like no one asks because they're just trying to get stuff done, because it's they're under pressure from this and that, or they don't have the funding, or they don't have that, because everyone's trying to do a race to the bottom. And saw that with, other media things. You look at like movies, these days, and there's a ton of like low to mid budget indie movies that are pretty good. There's some decent ones coming out of Hollywood, but how many things are sequels or prequels or, reboots of stuff? And it's because it's instead of going, we're going to try to give viewers something that might be different or might be interesting because this will challenge them. It's just, we're going to give them something that we know will make money.
Yeah, I think it's that, and my little tinfoil hat brain also kind of goes, they're sort of just making bread and circuses for what they view the average person's intelligence is.
Well, and that's a great thing, because the other part is talking about like the internet as a whole.
Yeah.
It used to be in the 90s when you got on the internet, it was all like basically people that were a little bit nerdy, that either you really loved a subject and wanted to have like a corner of the web about it, or maybe you just were fascinated with computers, or you wanted to do this, or you found a forum somewhere that other people were doing like-minded stuff. And I think now with social media, it's like, and the fact that everybody has a broadband connection, everybody has the internet in their pocket, like, while that's great in some ways, I think that this allowed a lot of people to just have a voice that maybe they shouldn't have to that level.
Agreed.
And I know that that's not going to be a popular thought.
No, there's probably people on the other side of the, speakers going, oh my God, you're infringing on our First Amendment rights. Well, we're lucky to have them in the first place at this point. So,
but I sit there and I go, I think the thing is, if you're going to use that as a platform, right, that like, make sure what you're doing is accurate. And worthwhile and lasting. And I think that, social media has given everybody just the ability to like quickly have a response to something or quickly post something. And there's no thought to it because it's just like, oh, this is going to get a reaction.
Well, and everyone thinks that they're the most important person in the room now too, because now they have a mouthpiece.
Yeah.
Well,
again, you look at like the journalism world, and it's like, people like Walter Cronkite or like Peter Jennings or Tom Brokaw were like important because it was like, well, we're going to tune in at, 6:30 every night and see what they have to say. And, they are the managing editor of the program. So it's like their name is on the line if the content sucks. And, we've kind of gotten away from that. And then, like, again, in some ways, it's better that there's so many options out there.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it's like the amount of times that somebody can send something sensationalized, because, again, it may fit an algorithm and then becomes in your echo chamber and you believe it or whatever else. So, yeah, it's scary in that way, because I think, again, that this is just like finding an average of, instead of going, oh, there's people that are experts on this that are maybe being a little gatekeepy. Instead, it's just this can spread around because, somebody shouted it loud enough.
Yeah. So if you had a piece of advice for somebody, like a kid like you, let's say, maybe not your younger self, because that's a whole different set of circumstances, but a kid like you that was smart and, technologically inclined, had all of these interests, what piece of advice might you give them to like ensure that they had a bright future, so that they could provide for themselves and live happily ever after, as it were?
Yeah. I don't know, because again, like somebody who's like a kid these days, I'm going like, I don't know what your college, potential environment's going to look like. And
would you even like advocate for them going to college, I guess, is a good question.
Well, I think again, like that, because among other things, right? I follow some sports. I follow like the backstory of a lot of things like that.
Yeah.
And I think there's always the debate of like, do you force people to go to college before you can draft
go to college and then get a good job and make a nice living for yourself?
But that's been a debate for like a lot of sports, is like, granted, like now you have like, name and likeness and whatnot, but I think for, that it's like some places go, we want to at least have somebody with like a year of college under their belt because it causes them to live on their own, to have some maturity. Like, and of course, like, yeah, most freshmen, you're not gonna be the most mature person, but you still, there's that culture shift of having to live on your own and work with others. And, maybe, oh, you're on a college team where you're not the best player now, or some of those kind of things. And so I think that like having some college is probably not a bad thing.
Yeah.
I think maybe, again, like going into a degree program and going like, I may not be guaranteed a job in this program, but like it still is something that's going to make you a more well-rounded person.
Yeah.
And so, that's the part where I'm going like, if you can go to school cheap, that's the smart thing.
Yeah.
If you can go to school and maybe get something where it's like, okay, it's not a super specific degree. Like I'm not saying go get a gen ed degree, but I'm saying like, if you're interested in computers, maybe computer science, but it may not have to be computer science. It could be something where if you're mixing, again, if you're going to like a small liberal arts college, enjoy some of those other classes because they're going to make you a more well-rounded person. I think that like higher ed has gotten away from that.
Oh, yeah, because they've doubled down on all things STEM, because if you go into STEM, you're guaranteed to make millions of dollars.
Yeah, and I mean now the amount of people with tech backgrounds that have been laid off, it's like, oh, so where did those STEM degrees really help?
Right.
And I think like, again, that so many colleges and universities are so scared of losing enrollment that are losing, and they go, well, we need to figure out how to get students jobs. But then there's not the like actual process of that. In a lot of cases, it's just we're trying to adapt our programs to things that students will, be more employable for. Yeah. So, go get an MBA or go get, and I think that like going to college, kind of like the old days, where it's I'm going here to mature, to make myself a more well-rounded person, to maybe get some different skills and context. That's we almost need to go back to the basics of that.
Yeah.
Where it's like your degree is going to be something that like you're going to learn, but then everything else is going to sort of make you more well-rounded.
So you don't think that they need to be, like experts in the use of AI in order to be employable?
I have really complex feelings about AI these days.
I know you do. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah. The part that gets me, and because like I may be an AI skeptic to an extent. Sure. Like I recognize that it is an amazing technology. It's interesting. It can be used for some stuff that's really, really good. You need to sift through a lot of data. You need to like analyze that. Sure. Put the computer to work. Yeah. I think that AI is being used for a lot of terrible stuff. I mean, I think the energy usage and the sort of exploitation of that, the slop that's happening. I mean, I just die a little inside when I see like those plasticky AI slop videos.
Ooh, so gross.
Or it's like, again, it's like, oh, and like on the one hand, I get that some people are like amazed by it, that it's like, oh, I can just type something in and get an image that I was like imagining in my head, when like, you could sit there and go, oh, but like you would have to use Photoshop and have some skills to do that.
But AI is magical.
Yeah. And I'm going, there's a lot of people that are using it just assuming that it's like witchcraft, because I mean, like, that's the thing is that was the case with like Wi-Fi 10 years ago. It was like, I don't know how it works. It just is this thing that like magically happens.
Right.
And so that's the part where I'm just going like, the fact that like the amount of AI needs to be this, or everybody needs to be using AI because I think that's the part, is that so many companies are starting to say this. And it's like, but you're like, I don't necessarily need to, like, my role doesn't require, like AI won't make it any better. And they're like, but you need to be using AI. Use it to write your emails. And I'm just like, why?
Right.
Like I don't know. I'm a thinking, feeling human. And it's like, if I can't communicate my point across in an email, then maybe I shouldn't be writing emails.
So I've contemplated this at length as an academic who became an academic without the use of much computer assistance at all, because the nature of my work is reading things that are put on paper, or archived in some way. And being that my background is also somewhat in education, I'm like, well, so, okay, use AI to do computery things that you don't want to do. Let's say we do use AI to write our emails or do mundane things. Sure. Is that going to cause some sort of atrophy in our linguistic brain, I wonder?
Well,
if we're not the ones engaging in the language.
Well, and I think too that you already hear people that are like so smug about the fact that it's like, oh, I used AI to plan like a walking trip to town or something, and that, or it's like what, you couldn't just look on like your Maps app and like drop a pin and like figure out the route that way.
It seems like the intellectual laziness equivalent of those like hover people from Wall-E. Yeah, I feel like we're gonna intellectually turn ourselves into that if we let AI do all of these things.
And the part of me that like maybe is a little skeptical too, right, is because it's this idea of the proverbial they is saying you need to have AI skills. You need to be able to use AI because that's the only way you're going to be employable in the next like couple of years. And it's just like, says who?
Right.
Like I look at like, people I work with, and it's like none of their jobs could necessarily be replaced by AI.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cases like that. There are some that definitely could be replaced by AI somewhere.
Basically any CEO or CFO.
But like it's this sort of decree that's being thrown down, and it's like on top of that, it's like AI to me is not a skill set like being able to manage files on your computer or basic computer literacy, because it's like, oh, which camp are you going to fall into? The Chat GPT camp, the Copilot camp, the Claude, or this and that, and it's just like basically. All of these are leading to companies that are going to be charging monthly subscriptions for stuff. And it's like they're trying to bake it into everything. Every product now is with AI. And
or protein.
Yeah, and it's just it's kind of separating that sort of fad / hype cycle with what's an actual good, technology. And I think that's what's been a turnoff for everybody, is it's like this is the same thing as like crypto bros from like a few years back. This is the same thing as like, remember when NFTs were a thing? And it's like, listen,
God,
you're not like
so painful.
Like, I mean, I'm still waiting for the fact that it's like, well, if crypto is so great, why can I not go buy groceries with it?
Right.
And again, like I understand the tech sort of design of that and like how it can be better objectively, but in the real world no one's using it for stuff other than maybe like investing or shady stuff. And it's like the same thing with AI, is it's like my daily routine, I don't think if I like decided I'm going to incorporate AI into every aspect of it, it wouldn't really work. And I think that's the part, is like there's this idea of like, well, you don't want to be left behind, so you better get, it's sort of just another version of the, well, you got to get a college degree to get a job.
And I feel like, at least based on what you've told me, because I am now out of the higher ed game for some years. So I'm not dealing with admin and meetings and things in the ways that I used to, right? But it seems to me, even in the limited like interactions I've had with these people, that there's sort of a cronyism among like people that are like, oh, well, I use Chat GPT to la di da di da di da di da, and they feel like, it seems like anyway, that if they're not actively talking about and promoting AI, that they're afraid that some imaginary boogeyman is going to come down on them.
Yeah.
Do you feel that way?
Yeah, I think that's exactly the case. I mean, I've seen some interesting uses of AI and that, but it's like sort of this idea of like, well, everybody has to be using AI because it's the future.
Yeah.
And I just kind of sit there and go like, it's great, but like at what cost? And do we really need to be using it for like simple stuff that like you could just look up? Or learn, and the fact that it's inaccurate a lot too. I mean, the thing is, and then you get into the ethical questions of LLMs like stealing copyrighted material, and and then the other side of it too is like companies are using AI in ways that are just terrible. I mean, we look at like mass surveillance, we look at like companies weeding through resumes because it's like looking through this and that. And it's like, cool. So they want you to jump through all these hoops. Or like there's even been time that they're doing like AI interviews for like first round.
Oh my God.
And it's like, if you can't be bothered to even just like catch up with a person in person or, over a video call, it's like, what kind of respect is that for your employees?
Right.
And it's like, I guess I just don't want to have to jump through those kind of hoops. And that's sort of the like where I've landed. I'm happy in a way, but I'm like, it really makes me sad that it's like people have to be so performative to try to just get a job doing whatever. And especially like if you enjoy messing with computers, like, and you want to do that as a career, it just feels like everything's stacked against you. And part of it too, I think, is like, again, looking at like the industry's changed so much there,
Right.
where it's consolidated for power and such, you know, few big companies run everything. And
Yeah, and I mean, I echo those feelings so much. I feel like anybody wanting to go into any kind of creative field, whether it's music or tech or telecom or otherwise, it's just like the whole thing seems stacked against you. So you may as well just be happy doing something that brings you joy, that is maybe around people that you don't hate. Like, I feel like that's the best we can do. Like, maybe that's the new American dream.
Yeah.
is settling for the mundane, I suppose.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean, I think that's the thing, is like I said, I've got a friend who was doing some contract work, lost the job, and then you know, has been looking, and it's like the amount of just hoops to jump through. And this is somebody who's been gainfully employed for like a while, and is, you know, good at what she does. But it's just like that, you know, it's sort of, it's the dance monkey, and maybe we'll consider giving you another round of interviews.
Right.
And these are not even like good high profile companies. Like, I could see, like, you know, there's always like the stories from like years ago of like the Google interviews,
right,
or like, you know, oh, you want to go work at Facebook? Well, you know, this. And those, you know, to me, it's like, yeah, if I was going to go work at like a company like that, I could see that it's like there's a lot of steps. But like, you shouldn't have to be doing those kind of things to go, you know, just do some like data entry job somewhere, or something that, you know, you're going like, okay, you know, you've been employed for a while, you're competent, great.
Yeah.
But no, this is interview round number 5.
Yeah. And maybe that's the message to the gifted kids out there, or to anyone, frankly. But, you know, to those of us who in our younger years did strive for more, like did strive to overachieve, etc., chill. You know,
yeah.
I mean, maybe the best you can hope for out of the American dream is to just have peace.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's absolutely true. I mean, and again, like, I've seen so many like folks that are like my age that are like stressed about work or this and that. And it's like, they, you know, they want to do one thing, and they're like, this is what I'm tying my whole identity to.
Yeah.
Because
it's so sad.
Because it's like, when, you know, because I mean, think about it, in casual conversation. I mean, even in like, you know, the dating world, right? It's like, oh, what do you do?
Oh yeah, and then you come up with like a whole. I am 100% guilty of this with you, actually. Like, when we were initially talking, I'm happy to admit my bias here, but like when you told me that you worked in tech, I just immediately went, oh, he's a computer guy. He probably doesn't live that much of an interesting life, and all things that I do and, you know, musical things are going to be like groundbreaking and interesting, you know, and that was so unfair. But I feel like I was conditioned by all of the dating experiences I had had prior, not because I dated a bunch of tech bros, because you're not a tech bro, but you get this notion in your head that if a person does this, then they are this thing, or this way.
And that's all they do.
Yeah. And we're both victims of that system and also beholden to it at the same time, like, as people. And I think that's fundamentally so wrong.
Yeah. Well, and especially because, again, it's like, you know, you sit there and go, oh, well, you know, don't you do more? And it's like, certainly, like, if a great opportunity presented itself, you know, I'd like that. I know, you know, we're talking about some possible changes, you know, just for, you know, as we have folks retire or move on to other things. And so, like, I don't want to make it sound like I'm not like ambitious in some ways.
Right.
But I've also learned that it's like having places where things are a known quantity, and having peace, and having maybe flexibility with your work schedule, or having, you know, just where you go to work, and it you know, let's face it, work kind of sucks in general, but going somewhere where, you know, you don't have a boss who's an asshole, or you don't have the fact that it's like you're getting yelled at because you went in at 8:01, and you know, or those kind of things, and so it's like, my job is just something that I do, and then when I'm not at work, you know, I have many other interests and activities. I mean, I think in some ways, you know, I kind of joked with you that like my website's not making me rich,
right?
But I've been doing it now for 26 years and change.
And you've been, you know, quoted and used as a resource by so many other folks in your industry. I think that really speaks to the depth of the website.
I mean, it's definitely like kind of like in the grand scheme of things, a small potatoes site.
Sure.
But like, it's kind of like, you know, again, like you talking about like your world as a working musician, that like, yeah, you're not necessarily famous. Right. But like, you've got your little circle. People are like, oh yeah, I've heard of that or whatever. And so it's like, in some ways, like, you know, if I were to, you know, get hit by a bus next week.
Let's hope not.
Yeah. And probably not likely, because I'm not really walking out in front of buses, but you know, we always have kind of that contingency for like emergency stuff at work. And it's like, yeah, work would go on. They would find somebody new to take my role. I feel like some people would be bummed to hear the bad news,
Right,
which is kind of, again, one of those where it's like, yeah, how do you work with other people? If they're sad to see you go, even if you ultimately get replaced, like, you're probably doing okay.
Yeah.
But it's like my website will be kind of my lasting bit. That's where I've been doing all my writing. That's where I've, tried some different things and elevated other people too. And so that's the, like, in some ways that's my job, even if it doesn't pay well.
Yeah.
And all these other things are just kind of side activities.
Nice. Well, we're down to the last question of, the session. I ask everybody this, and being that you've helped me, populate this podcast and get it out there, you already know what's coming. If you were a flavor of ice cream, what flavor of ice cream would you be?
So I was prepared for this because I know
you listen to my podcast.
And so for me, I would go with mint chocolate chip.
Oh, okay.
It's one of my favorites.
Uh-huh.
So that's probably why I jumped to that.
Uh-huh.
Not necessarily because again, like, for this question, it could be your favorite, but it might not be what describes you. But I feel like it's one that's like a little unexpected at times. You're not always going to be able to get that everywhere.
Sure.
And it's kind of an interesting, different thing. I mean, I'm not really a big chocolate person in general, but I feel like it's just enough in there. It's a little, you get a little crunch that it's interesting. And I hope that, like, in some ways that I'm sort of interesting and maybe a little well-rounded in some ways. So that's...
Well, I think you're very interesting. That's why I have you on the show and spend, the majority of my life with you. Awesome.
But yeah, so yeah, I think that's about all that I can think of. I mean, like I said, I appreciate where you're coming from about, being kind of dark on higher ed.
Oh, totally.
And some of the things do need to be shaken up. I think, like I said, if I can, like, have a lasting thought for the higher ed side of it, is mostly that, like, everyone is trying to guess where they need to do to make students employable, except that they're not going, we need to pare down programs where there just is no market.
Yeah.
And if you're going like, hey, you want to study this just because you find it interesting, like, great, but you need to be upfront about that.
Yeah.
And I think, like, because again, like, there are people that are maybe getting like a philosophy degree.
Right.
And, like, don't get me wrong, like, probably some really smart people doing some really
Absolutely.
smart things, but it's not necessarily there's a direct career path for that.
Right. Well, really, there's just one career path for that, and that is to teach philosophy.
Right.
Right. It's kind of, well, and we joke about euphonium players in this way. So, like, the career path for a euphonium player is, I've picked up a euphonium and now I'm in a military band. You could, in theory, just skip college entirely, because if you learn all of their very limited repertoire, you're gonna end up in a military band, even if you're a mediocre euphonium player, because that is the only job that they have. They're not employed by orchestras. But it's the same thing. Who wakes up in the morning and goes, you know what? I'm going to be the world's greatest euphonium player. Not very many people, But philosophy, those sorts of degrees, study the things that make you happy, obviously.
Yeah, and I think it's more the learning how to think on your own. And I think that's the part that so many institutions are trying to get away from, because they're just like, well, where's the job market? What programs can we get rid of, for the bottom line? And so, not that, any high school kids are necessarily listening to this show going like, oh yes, I want career advice from,
from someone who is dark on careers.
But I think the idea is like going, okay, you're using your time in college to grow as a person. And I think the institutions could maybe do better about navigating the job market, or going like, oh yeah, let's try to have 100% placement rate for some of these big programs. Yeah. And that may not happen for large, schools that have programs that are well known, but for the smaller ones, I think that, because you go, look, we're graduating like, 200 students out of 1,000 student campus. Yeah. Can we find them jobs?
Right.
Can we support them? And I'm thinking, 200 students, that's sort of everyone can pitch in and help them out.
Or at the very least, get them the skills that they would need to fend for themselves.
Yeah.
Like, that's my gripe in all of this.
And maybe teach them not to pigeonhole themselves into one career path.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this has been fascinating. And I'm sure that there's a lot of folks that can relate to these seemingly endless pivot that you've experienced, obviously, but really at the end of the day, it's like, do you have peace at the end of the day? You know, what is the American dream? And if it's that you just get to live your life and not be bothered by very many people, maybe that's the best we can do, and that's okay. You know.
But I think, you know, the other lasting thing, and I feel like this is getting like the, you know, Lord of the Rings, where how many endings are there?
Yeah.
But I think the other lasting thing that I will just throw in there is, you know, do some things outside of work. Find some stuff that you enjoy, because, you know, again, if you get laid off, if you lose your job, I mean, it sucks. And then you have to then your full-time job is finding a new one. But like, you kind of realize that without your job, you just don't have an identity as a person and nothing to fall back on.
Oh, that's so true.
And so I think trying new hobbies, messing with stuff. I mean, if you're looking to work in tech, tinker with things.
Yeah.
You know, play with stuff, have a home lab, do something.
Right. And honestly, I mean, this goes back to another, like a previous episode, the one with Brandon Hall. That is how we beat AI, is to be more human. Like, that was one of his main points on that show. And I think that definitely applies here, and like to what you said. Not only would that help you be a more well-rounded and happy person to go do those things, but like, that's how we beat the computers, is being more human, interacting with other humans, tinkering with stuff, exploring what this, you know, world is around us. I think we're losing sight of that, and we're offloading that exploration of computers, and that's profoundly sad.
Well, yeah, and focus on being like intentional and finding things that are delightful, and that like, again, that like a computer can't necessarily feel and go, that was really clever, or that was really well done. Yeah. And I think that those kind of things are something that we still need to do as people.
Right. Absolutely. Well, folks, get out there and be humans. Thank you so much for being on the show. Yeah, I appreciate your time. Yeah. And we'll catch you next time. Thanks for sticking with us. I know that was a long story, but sometimes perspective really helps. It especially helps me to know that I'm not alone. And so hopefully it'll help you to know that if you find yourself pivoting every few years, every couple months, you're not alone. The world has become hostile to those of us who are well-educated, and it's not about to get any better. I think the best we can really do is make the best of what we've got, and I feel like Eric has done an exemplary job of that. So hopefully his story helps you as much as it's helped me. In the meantime, stay caffeinated at hideawaycoffee.com. Enter Rogue10 for 10% off your favorite roast, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.